And good afternoon. Welcome to our board members, to our staff members, to our guests, and most importantly, to those of you who have joined us live. We're broadcasting our Monday, May 26th Quality Tenant Engagement Committee of Toronto Seniors Community Housing. My name is Linda Jackson, and I have the good pleasure of chairing this committee. So we're going to get started. There's a lot happening in May, except sunshine, but I'd like to acknowledge that May is Asian Heritage Month. It's Canadian Jewish Heritage Month. It's Polish Heritage Month on a federal level, as well as Armenian and Dutch Heritage Month. This week is National Accessibility Week, which is an opportunity to reflect on and celebrate how far we've come, the work ahead, and to realize our goal of barrier-free Canada by 2040, something very important to this organization and to many of our tenants. May 28th, coming up, is World Hunger Day, a day dedicated to raising awareness about global food insecurity and the urgent need for sustainable solutions. June's a busy month, which our CEO will address in his CEO update. So that's great. So we have a full agenda today, like usual, and thank you to the team at Toronto Seniors Community Housing for putting it together. We will be focusing on our strategic directions, and just as a reminder to those of you joining us, this committee has the responsibility of monitoring our progress on our strategic plan. We also will present the operational dashboard. And the reason to move out, and I really want to thank our team for putting that together, because that was a request from our past meeting, and so that will be presented. That's the reason that tenants move out, and trying to have an understanding what happens in that process. Our engagement, partnership, and communication update, and we're also going to have a city follow-up on our service model report, and a report on naturally occurring retirement communities, and a presentation, a follow-up from our last meeting on our community safety unit, Q1 report. We have two deputations, and we'll make sure that we get that, and they're both from Bill, on number 11, engagement, partnerships, and communication update, and on the naturally occurring retirement communities, which some people will call them NORC, but we will try to actually stay away from acronyms so that people know what we're talking about. I'd now like to proceed to our next agenda item, which is our land and African acknowledgement, ancestral acknowledgement. So, Toronto Senior Housing acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Toronto is home to a vast diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis who enrich this city. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Dish with One Spoon WAMBA. That's a treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg nations, the two-row Wambam Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, as well as Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties involving the Anishinaabeg and the Crown. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to reconciliation. We honor the land through our communities and programs that reflect and respect its heritage. Our land acknowledgement marks a very small but a little step in the process of reconciliation and building a positive relationship with Indigenous people. The African ancestral acknowledgement, I will now state, Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation acknowledges that racism and injustices faced by individuals who are brought to this land involuntarily, particularly those affected by the transatlantic slave trade. We acknowledge the experiences of Black people who arrived in Canada seeking a better life following the abolition of slavery by the British in 1834, while also recognizing the structural, systemic, and individual racism they encountered, which continues to persist today. This racism culminated in the tragic destruction of Africa, which was once the largest settlement of the Black community in Canada. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to recognizing all forms of racism, especially anti-Black racism, and is actively working to combat these injustices. I always like to take a moment to think and pause and reflect myself actually after reading this, so it's not just statements on a piece of paper for me. Okay. Item number 3 is our new business and approval of the public meeting agenda. Does any board or committee member have any new business or amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. May I have a QTE committee member move that the May 26, 2025 QTE committee public meeting agenda be approved as presented? And I'm going to look for Fareed or Jim. Thank you. And thank you. All in favor? Thanks very much. So hearing no objections, we will move ahead. So be it resolved that the May 26, 2025 public agenda as presented to QTE is approved. We'll now move to item 4, conflict of interest. Does anybody have any conflict interest to declare at this point? Okay, seeing and hearing none. And I just remind people that if over the course of the meeting you discover that you do have a conflict, just please identify it and we will acknowledge it at that point. But hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, approval of the QTE public minutes. Our approved February 10th QTE meetings have been amended, and we just wanted to raise that. We try very hard to not identify any information on staff with names. On page 5 of February 10th, we've made a slight amendment, and I'm looking for a QTE committee member to move that the February 10th, 2025 amended QTE committee public minutes be approved. Fareed.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and seconded by Jim. Great. All in favor? Thank you very much. And I would say, just an acknowledgement that obviously staff members that are at a senior level that are presenting would be in minutes, just to make that clear. Okay, be it resolved that the February 10th, 2025 amended QTE committee meetings are approved as presented. Now on to the public minutes of our last meeting, which was March 24th, 2025. Are there any edits or comments to those minutes? Speaks to how well our team does in putting the minutes together. Hearing none, may I have a QTE committee member, not my dog, move that the March 24th committee minutes be approved as presented, right on cue, right? Fareed, thank you. Jim, seconded. All in favor? Thank you so much. So be it resolved that the March 24th, 2025 QTE committee public minutes are approved as presented. And we'll now move to item 6, action review items. The 2 action items from March 24th meeting are marked as complete because they've been brought forward to the meeting. And thank you for that. I'm really pleased that actually we regularly have our action items. Some boards, committees can have action items that carry over and over, and it takes work to actually make sure that we close on that. So if there aren't any comments on the action items? All right. Hearing none, and I'm looking forward to us actually presenting on the remaining action items at today's meeting. We'll move on to our CEO, and who's going to do an update. And I'll pass it over to you, Tom.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda, and through the chair to the committee. As Linda mentioned, June is going to be a very busy month for us, but it is a really fantastic opportunity for us to celebrate the rich tapestry of cultures and experience that make up our community. So it is for us Indigenous Heritage Month, Filipino Heritage Month, Pride Month, and Seniors Month. And just a little bit on each one of those. For Pride Month, we're partnering with Toronto Community Housing to host a joint party at June 29th at 423 Yonge Street on the second floor terraces. And the message for Pride this year is all in, and which really reflects our unwavering commitment to inclusivity and belonging for everyone. And to deepen our understanding and foster a more inclusive environment, we are also kind of exploring and plan on having a lunch and learn. And also to celebrate Filipino Heritage Month, Ron Reyes, one of the staff, and he did a video for us last year. He's once again putting together another video, so stay tuned for that. They're always very informative and really, very endearing and help connect us with that community. For Indigenous Heritage Month, we'll be featuring a video from York University within our staff newsletter. And we're really pleased that Jim, our board member, has graciously agreed to speak to our staff at our upcoming town hall on June the 18th. So really looking for that opportunity to be for Jim to be sharing and for us to engaging with him. And also, as I mentioned, the last is Seniors Month, and we're going to be distributing posters to all of our buildings, and also there will be at this time of year doing internal and external videos to recognize Seniors Month. And then moving on, just wanting to make this committee aware about the activity at our building at 175 Comer, actually on that location. And earlier this month, and actually was May 1st, the city held a craning ceremony for the three-story modular supportive housing, affordable housing building that's under construction. The address is 185 Comer. And it's what's quite exciting, of course, is more affordable housing, but also Wood Green Community Services will be. They were selected to manage that building, and so they have already spoken to us about about possible opportunities with the building at 185, but also our building at 175. And there's also a long-term care facility on that campus. So it really is becoming kind of a nice continuum of care for seniors. Also, I'm just going to quickly mention we had another round of our regional tenant meetings. We had well over 100 staff attending the four of those, and Deanna is going to provide more comment on that. But we were just really kind of pleased with the increased commitment and attendance that we had from tenants for this round. Really, kind of the growth of our Community Connect Plus. And I just this is an item that, and I hope that either our Karen or Emma can put up. This is a really kind of unique project that happened at one of our buildings at our Merrill Street community, where one of our tenant artists have depicted, and he did this in a screening of the tenants, and then there is their respective stories, and so they're in the process of putting these together. But what we have also done is taken those images and we created thank you cards, which our tenant volunteers now have our region the tenant volunteers who attended a regional meetings, they have to share with other tenants. So just I thought it really a kind of interesting project. And then just the final note in my update, there is a thanks for putting those up. And just my final comment with a community safety meeting that's coming up at 2835 Lakeshore with Councillor Morley. This is some of you may even have heard of the activity in this area as it relates to a shelter that is planned to be built, and there is many citizens in the area who are not pleased with that being built there. And but with myself, Brad, and then our um, regional operations manager, Rajan Weeks, we're going to be attending that meeting. It is specifically for attendance for our tenants, just so that we can clearly understand what may be their concerns and how we best support them through this activity. So that is my update for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, those portraits are amazing.
Aren't they?
Thank
I
you very
know.
much for sharing them, and a shout out to Jim, who's out on the speaking trail, and welcome, Councillor Crisanti. I noticed that you've joined us, so thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Tom? It's going to be a busy month. So keep us informed as board members if there's anything that you think that board members might want to come along and cheerlead. Sounds great, Tom.
Thank you.
So I think we'll move on then, seeing no hands. We'll move on to the strategic directions progress report. And as I mentioned, this is something that our committee has accountability for, and Grant and his team leads this. And I'll pass it over to Grant to walk us through how we're doing on the strategic directions.
Thank you, Linda, and good afternoon, everybody. Through the chair. So the report before you contains the Q1 update on our progress on the strategic directions, as Linda has noted. I'll highlight a few of the items that are reflected in the dashboard attachment, and then there's an attachment on some of the roadmap initiatives and progress. And then I'll take any questions. So on the dashboard, just a couple of the key results. On the rent collection rate for Q1, we were at 100.2%, so actually over 100%, with 96% of households in good standing with regards to arrears. And overall rent and parking arrears reduced from 1.442 million in January to 1.35 million by March, or about 91,000, so it's come down. On vacancy management and housing occupancy, we've exceeded the target. The target is 98%. So we've been better than target at 98.4% in March, so that's good. The average unit turnover was 66 days. This is up slightly from 61 days in Q4 of last year. However, it still exceeds or is better than the industry average of 79 days, and that's the sector average from other local housing corporations in Ontario. With regards to work orders, the maintenance work orders have shown a completion rate of 86% for those that are done by staff, and 43% for vendors against the service levels, and the service levels are noted on the dashboard. That's a slight improvement over the quarter, for note. With regards to pest management, a total of 674 units were declared pest-free, and there were a number of units where there was some coordination to support tenants getting ready for pest treatment, of which staff helped with 20, and we coordinated with Toronto Public Health for 27 of those. On tenant engagement, I'll highlight a couple of things here, and I know Deanna has a more detailed update as well as Brad later on different aspects of what's here. There were 237 CAF applications, Community Activities Fund applications entered in Q1, so that's quite a few. And 43 were approved of those applications for a total of just over $3,000 distributed. This is expected to increase as we move forward into Q2 and throughout the year. The annual planning meetings were also held, 72 of those. From a program and partnership perspective, there are also 273 recurring programs. These are tenant-led or service provider-led programs. I'll note that's an increase from 238 that was noted in the Q4 dashboard from last year. Under the employer of choice, there was one town hall held in the first quarter with about 120 staff attending. Leadership training was completed within TSHC for a number of people leaders. And as the committee and board would know, the inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, or IDEA strategy, was approved. And then I'll note that on the staff vacancy rate, it's at 4% and turnover at 0.2%, so quite low. On the roadmap, the second attachment, there were 7 planned activities for Q1 of 2025. 5 of those were completed and 2 had revised timelines, so 71% of the 7 were done. That actually now represents an overall completion of 61% for the strategic directions, or 90 of 148 overall time limited activities. Some highlights of things completed in Q1, which are noted in the second attachment, include the 2025 budget, the enterprise risk management and risk management scope and assessment, the risk dashboard, the fraud prevention policy, the onboarding program for TSHC, and some leadership training, as I just mentioned. We will be discussing the future strategic directions and where we go forward and an approach for that in an upcoming board strategy session in July. And I'll pause at this point and take any questions.
Great. Any questions? Just looking around. Comments?
I see Reed, I think.
Reed has his hand up,
great.
Linda.
Thanks, Reed. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Grant. Good presentation, and what gets measured gets done. So I'm glad that we're monitoring this on an ongoing basis. I have a few questions. Actually, I have quite a few, but I'm going to sort of prioritize it so I don't take up all the time. The issue around the service level on the contractors that we engaged, are we doing anything to increase that? I mean, if it's 43% now, what is it that's holding us back? And what are we doing to try and hold these contractors accountable? Or do we have these SLAs built into the agreement we have with them? And are there penalties to, if they don't meet some of these imperatives?
So through the chair, I see Brad has put his hand up. I'm gonna ask Brad if he could address this one.
Yeah, great question, Fareed. And through the chair, it's one of the projects that we have that we're looking at working on. It's probably going to end up in 2026 is looking at changing the maintenance service levels. This is an outdated way that we've looked at it, and we're measuring them against 5 days. But some of the contracts, if we're replacing a kitchen, for instance, with custom millwork, the vendor's allowed 6 weeks under the contract to facilitate that repair. So one of the items that we're looking at with Grant's team in mind is to try and come up with a different service level where we're triaging maintenance repairs and judging vendors against the priority of the repair. So if somebody doesn't have a working toilet, we would expect that repair done within 24 hours, but maybe a loose towel bar would be a 2-week sort of window for a repair, and more getting into a triage instead of that flat 2 and 5 day that doesn't take into account some of the contracts and the timelines built into them.
Yeah, I think through you, Madam Chair, it makes sense to segregate these things, right? Because I think we can to sort of kind of measure some of these big projects, as you point out, Brad. So I think it makes sense because it doesn't look good when we're having a 43 level achievement rate, for third parties. And then the second question I have, and maybe I'll come back if there are no other questions, has to do with pest management, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, right? I mean, I understand the numbers that are before us. I mean, I think we've said it 1,416 are treated for bed bugs, cockroaches, rodents, etc., and 264 declared pest free. How do we reconcile the 1,416 against the 264, and do we need to reconcile it? I guess what I'm trying to ascertain is, of all the units that we have and the ones that we continue to treat for these identifiable pests, what are we looking for in terms of pest free? And I know that we had a bit of a conversation the last time we spoke about this, and I know we can't sort of guarantee complete pest free when you have these units co-locating. But Brad, is there anything that you can shed some light on? I mean, what are we looking at by way of achievement rate when it comes to the ones that are pest free versus the ones that we have treated?
Again, great observation. It's one of the things that, again, we have to look at the way that we're measuring it. For instance, a bed bug treatment consists of three treatments split apart by 2 weeks apiece. So when you're looking at overall treatment rates, it's really not a great comparator. What we started to look at and what we're trying to measure now is the recidivist rate. So when a unit becomes pest free, how long are we able to maintain it pest free? And how long are we able to work with the tenant in order to change the behaviors that led to the original infestation? The other thing that the numbers don't take into account is TSHC uses a block treatment form. So when we have a unit that is a pest that is identified with live pests, we treat the unit above, the unit below, the unit on either side, and then diagonal as well. So every time you treat a pest unit, you're actually treating 8 other units as well. Those are preventative treatments that are done, but again, they're included in there. And it's one of the things that we have to look at doing is pulling out the preventative treatments, because that 1-to-8 ratio kind of gives you an idea of how we're overstating the infestation problem by just talking about the total number of units that we're treating, because we're not properly capturing that. And then on top of that, if we were to find live activity in a neighboring unit, the block expands and the block keeps expanding. But we keep talking about overall treatment numbers instead of some of that preventative measures, which I think is what the committee would really like to see, is that we're getting ahead of the problem as opposed to just trying to tread water.
Yeah, and before Tom jumps in, Madam Chair, I have one final comment, and I think that's where I was going, Brad. I mean, I'm concerned about these numbers, and I think we get a good sense of the volume and kind of quantitative sense of the work that the staff are doing, which is great. But I think what I'm struggling with is the results. Is how are we measuring this against the results, and how do we benchmark this against other service provider who might be in a similar situation? And that's what I'm struggling with, because when I see these numbers, they're all good. We're measuring them. That's great. So, I mean, I think taking a more fundamental look at what it is that we're measuring and focus more on the outcomes, I think might be an exercise worth pursuing. So thanks for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, they're really great observations. Tom, did you want to comment further on that?
Just quickly through chair to the committee, and I think in addition to what Brad is saying, I think the other important kind of indicator, which also then speaks to outcomes, is the repeat treatments, right? So how often are we going in to repeat the treatment before it is pest free? So just wanted to add that to Freed's point, there does need to be more specificity around these indicators, and we are working on that. It just getting what we need in the background to be properly presenting those and accurately presenting those. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I know I'm conscious of not making more work. I sometimes wonder what the heat map looks like. And I'm curious sometimes of the number of new, new units, because I think that there's probably a lot of activity that is just, as all of us know, that once you actually have these critters, it's really hard to keep them out, forever. So, but any other comments?
Councillor Crisanti has his hand
Yeah,
up.
Councillor Crisanti?
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I was actually focusing on that as well. And Fareed asked the questions I was going to ask, but I just want to dwell on this just a little bit more, because I think this is really, really important. I deal with specific issues in my community regarding units that are treated, become pest free. They don't stay pest free very long. There seems to be that gap, as just mentioned earlier, 416 treatments, I believe, and 264 are pest free. The question is, do we track at all how long the pest free units remain pest free, or the two out of the 264 that are pest free today are not going to be pest free tomorrow? Is there any? Do we monitor that? How the repetition of these units that we got to continue to go back?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Brad. Go ahead.
Yeah, that Councillor Craig, that's one of the things that we're looking at measuring, and we're trying to measure it within kind of our dashboards that we have right now. So we're working on some Power BI to leverage technology, because it is a relatively small number of staff that monitor these and prepare these reports. So we're looking at how we can leverage the system and the Power BI platform in order to report on what actually gives the outcomes that we're looking for. It's another reason also, I know the data is not perfect as far as the way we're presenting it, but it's one of the reasons that you'll see on the operations dashboard that we are looking at, and we provided the numbers from last month, because measuring month to month in this industry, you're not going to see a lot of movement. But when we get to the next dashboard, we'll be showing you, we have the averages for 2024, which gives a better kind of sampling of the progress that we've been making over the last little bit. But refining our data and our reporting is key to one of the key outcomes we're looking for in 2025.
So Brad, it seems like at times, because we talk about this at every meeting, and it seems like we're chasing our tail, excuse the pun here. So how do we get, what do you define pest free, and what's pest free? So someone goes in the unit, they inspect, they happen to see one or two little critters, and they figure, okay, that's all there is. We're going to call it pest free. Or is pest free literally pest free, zero tolerance on any type of pest?
Yeah, great question. So pest free is a term that we use. The vendor inspects the units at the end of a treatment cycle, and from there, they determine whether it's pest free or not. The reason that we use the term pest free is because there's no signs of any live activity of any infestations. And what it triggers behind the scenes is a warranty from the vendor on that particular unit. That's why we use that term pest free, because it's taken out of the contract that Toronto Community Housing has with their vendors. That once the vendor declares a unit pest free, then all of a sudden there's a warranty in place for that unit for 6 months, in order where the vendor would be required to return at their own expense for any live activity that's found.
Do we have a program, Brad, to educate people on the critical importance of them doing their share? Because otherwise, like I said, we'll just be, circling back periodically to the same units over and over again. Pest-free today may not be pest-free in 6 months. And likely, and also because other units, so there's, out of 1,416, 264, well, the vast majority still have pests. So we need to maybe pick up our efforts to ensure that we really help people change their ways, because that's what it comes down to: the cleanliness, how you store your food, how you throw out your garbage, and a whole lot of things play into that. But it can't just be okay, a dozen people are doing that, but then 1,000 people are not. Won't work.
Yeah, so during 2024, we revisited and revised all of our pest preparation, all of our communications that were tenant facing with regards to pest treatments, infestations. Over the last 2 years, we've conducted tenant town halls in all of the communities once annually, and we'll be going back again in 2025. And we make pest control and reporting pest treatments and infestations a priority in that slide deck that we put before tenants, as well as the buildings that have the higher infestation level rates. Our supervisor for our environmental health unit, who takes care of the pest control and working with the vendor, he attends those tenant town halls personally in order to go into a little more further depth once we've determined that the infestation rate in a particular building is a little higher than others.
Okay, we could talk about it for another half an hour, but I'm not going to. I mean, I think we get the picture here. I'm just continuously concerned about this, and obviously some of the issues I deal with on an ongoing basis up here in Etobicoke North. And I don't know that we'll ever get there from here, but it seems to be an ongoing problem, nonstop. And we got to find aggressive ways of putting an absolute, if not a stop to this, but improving the gap and improving the numbers. In this day and age, where people are living in terrible conditions with pests all around them. I've seen some situations in the past that are, I don't want to talk about those details because nobody will be having any dinner tonight. Pretty bad stuff. And we all need to do it together. Teamwork. If we don't do it together, it's not going to get better. Anyway, those are my comments there.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Crisanti and Fareed. I think that what we continue to reinforce is the board recognizes the impact of pests on the enjoyment of people's homes and anything that we can be doing. So keep up the reporting. It's not just about reporting. It's feeling like you have new ways to approach this. So thank you for that. And I think we will get into this in terms of when our through our tenant surveys and through what our tenants are telling us as well in terms of how we're doing in this situation that's really hard to actually achieve perfection. So thank you for that. We'll keep asking the questions, and thank you, Brad, for being always open to answering them as much as you can. Any other questions, comments?
Jim has his hand raised.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Maybe you can answer this, Councillor. Does the TTC do pest control on their vehicles? Because that is spreading a lot around. I've two tenants in this building have complained that their unit's pest free, but they sat on the TTC and a bed bug crawled across them, and I've had it happen to me.
Yeah,
if everybody's not on board,
you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And look, I sat on the TTC board for a number of years in the past. I'm not currently on that board today. However, yes, that is an issue. And my understanding is, yes, they do pest control and a complete clean out of their buses and subways. But the problem is still evident. And I agree with you. Yeah, people pick these things up and they go home and there it is. And I've got some of my own constituents that are telling me, Councillor, we don't drive, we take the TTC, and we're scared to because of the result of my bed bugs or anything they pick up, they take it back with them. So that's something I'm happy to take carriage of and have further discussions with the current powers to be at the TTC and see what kind of feedback I get there and what steps we could take to ensure that we do our part in eliminating any pests on our transit system.
Thanks. Really good point, Jim. And it just reminds us that we live in a larger microcosm of that. It impacts all of us. So thank you for that question. All right. If I don't see any other questions, I think we will move on to the operational dashboard. That's okay. I don't think we need any approval, so I'm going to pass that back over to Brad. Brad, your hot seat is warm today, so we're going to pass it over to Brad to give us an update on the operational dashboard that was sent to members of the committee and online.
Thanks, Linda. Karen's just going to bring it up. So the first slide, Grant went over a lot of these numbers, the arrears, the vacancies. We just spoke about the pest management and the maintenance. The one thing I think I'd like to point out here is when you look at the 2024 average, we are below the 2024 average when it is a good thing, and we are above the 2024 average when it's a bad thing. And even with regards to the comments when we were speaking earlier about pest control, we are down from our annual average the previous year as far as units that we're applying pesticide to. Staff closing tickets and working with tenants is up. The percentage of work orders being closed within 2 days from staff is way up. And it's generally good news, and it's progress over the previous year. Next slide. With this one focuses more directly on the arrears. I'd like to point out there's only actually 424 tenants out of the 13,500 tenants units that we have that are involved in the arrears collection process, and that gives us an average of $2,800 and just over $2,800 per tenant who's actually in arrears. But it shows that, again, to Grant's point earlier, that 97% of our tenants have a zero balance or are in good standing with the corporation. Next slide. The vacancy rate, again, as Grant was saying, we've committed with the service manager of the City of Toronto for a 2% vacancy rate. We're down to 1.5. Cleaned up that after Christmas glut that we always get every year, just one of those seasonal trends. And while I know the move out report is coming, we have amended the dashboard. So the pie graph on the right hand side gives the board more of a breakdown as far as where people went and how they exited TSHC locations and buildings and units. And that'll be something that the committee will see moving forward. Next slide. This is with regards to the maintenance and the work that's being done by our vendors. As I said, we're going to be looking at a way to prioritize and revisit this as a metric and how we measure it to ensure that we're telling the right story. But you can see that our staff are mostly dealing with alarms and janitorial as well as plumbing issues, and the 5 categories over there represent 62% of the work that our superintendents and our custodial maintenance people and cleaners are doing on a monthly basis. Next slide. This is with regards to the administration tickets when people are contacting our staff. You can see that the rates have gone up, as I mentioned, went up substantially from the previous year as far as the days completed and how many are completed at the end of every month. The chart on the right gives the committee a breakdown of who is working with tenants in order to resolve these issues, as well as what the top categories are for that. And it's overwhelmingly our SSCs are working with tenants to resolve issues related to their rent review and ensure that everybody is paying the appropriate rent according to their income, which helps to stabilize the tenancies and keep the arrears low. Next slide. The pest control slide, again, just gives overall treatment numbers. We'll be looking at redeveloping this based on the feedback received today, as well as the feedback received at previous meetings. However, this slide also gives the number that our staff are working with Toronto Public Health, who's a partner in this. Toronto Public Health will help tenants to prepare their units. We know it's an onerous thing for a senior in order to prepare for pest control, as well as there's a small budget that Toronto Public Health holds for replacing beds that can't be saved and ensuring that tenants have a pest-free environment. And that is the end, except for the definitions in the glossary of that. So any questions?
Yeah, I think, and Brad is going to walk through a little bit more about the new item around the reason to move out. I just want to say I appreciate that you've added that, because that's something that we were really interested in. So besides that item, are there any other questions? We've done quite a dialogue on the pest management.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just need one clarification. Brad, on the maintenance work order as well as the administrative work, there is a reference to completion rate by the end of the month. I'm just trying to understand that metric. What happened to the residual amount? Does it get carried forward to the following month?
Yeah, through the chair. So yes, Fareed, it does get carried through to the rest of the month. As I mentioned earlier, some of the things that we do, whether it's millwork and flooring and things like that, 6 weeks is what a vendor has to install a custom kitchen or a vanity, bathtub replacements, and sometimes things like that. So oftentimes they're well within their contract to go into the next month, but we still do ensure that they're closed, and we do ensure that they're completed by the end of it, within a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And Brad, just a question that I had. So if I'm thinking about our discussion at our last meeting around anything that we can do to speed up those contracts, do we review that regularly in terms of, so if it's regularly 6 weeks to replace a kitchen, is there any way to review that to say, well, that's a big one, but even a bathtub, like that, to actually reduce the time?
We work with Toronto Community Housing. We work with their vendor management team, as well as really pleased to announce that we've been engaged recently on a lot of the tenders where they're looking for new vendors. Our feedback with regards to the pest control contract that we're currently operating under resulted in Toronto Community Housing withdrawing the tender, rewriting the RFP, and then resubmitting it based on some of the experiences and some of the feedback we gave them from our tenants. It's something that we're constantly reviewing and looking at, Linda.
That's great. Thank you.
We've had a lot of success with it lately.
Great. Thanks for bringing that forward. All right. If there aren't any other, oh, go ahead, Jim. No, you're still on mute, Jim.
When it comes to bathtub replacement, who determines that a bathtub needs replacing?
Yeah, through the chair. So the typical way it would work is a tenant would submit a work order for an item, such as having a bathtub replaced. That would be inspected by the site superintendent, who would then determine whether the bathtub requires to be replaced, whether it requires repair, reglazing, what have you. And then that repair is carried out. If there's a discrepancy, if there's a disagreement where the tenant believes that it should have been replaced and the superintendent is only offering repair, then the escalation map would be that the supervisor would attend the building, would go to the unit and would inspect it and would work with the tenant in order to understand what the threshold for replacement is versus what the threshold for repair would be. And they would be the tiebreaker and result of an issue between a tenant and the superintendent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Good question. All right. I don't see any other hands up. Just so I'm going to ask Brad to walk us through. And again, thank you for adding the reason to move out. And just if you could actually give us a little bit of more details on that. Thanks.
Yeah, so it was an action item from this committee to provide a report with regards to the reason that people vacate TSHC units. The report is attached. Oh, there we go. Karen's brought it up. So while tenants are not required to give us a reason for vacating, they oftentimes do. And I think that we've received, one of the things that I took away from this is you look at the decrease in no reason given. And I think that speaks to the relationship that our staff now have with not only the tenants, but with their families and with their caregivers that we do. We've seen an increase of over almost 4% with regards to the number of people who are giving us a reason why they are vacating or why their loved one vacated TSHC. Overall, you can see the categories with regards to the reasons given with the vast majority of tenants are either, unfortunately, they're deceased, which means that they have aged in place and are no longer able to require housing, or they've moved on to a nursing home or a support home, with different reasons sprinkled in between. This is something that we track within the operations team, just with regards to feedback, with regards to different projects and different programs, as far as the various ways that people exit TSHC.
Thank you. Any comments, or go ahead, Councillor Crisanti?
Sorry, could I get that that page back on the screen for a moment? Okay. Let me just zoom in. Even with glasses, I got problems here. Oh goodness. There we go. So there's a pretty large number, what I feel is a large number. No reason given, 193, 18%. So just curious where people go, if there's any, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, they find alternate housing, you know, that's important, and that they don't end up on the street. Secondly, there's tenants who abandoned their unit, 21 evicted, and there was another one here, arrears, I believe. What do we assist people that are evicted? What do we do with these people? Where do they end up? Any stats or any information on that?
Yeah, through the chair. We have what we refer to as our soft landing procedure, where we work with tenants who are vacating due to eviction or not of their own request, where we assist them with shelter beds. We provide them with a list of shelters that have available spots within them within the city of Toronto. Staff have taxi chits that can oftentimes be used to get the tenant from the building to the shelter. We offer them as many options as we possibly can, but unfortunately, their tenancy with Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation has come to a conclusion, and it's not a decision that we take lightly, but it is a very small number of tenants that are evicted, and this is often done in order to protect the larger tenant base that we have within a community.
Okay, yeah, just, you know, wondering, I mean, just hope that we have a lot of people on the streets still, living in tents, living on the streets, and I'm just hoping that, you know, we do our level best to ensure that whether they're evicted or they move out for any reason, that we do our best to look after their alternatives and their options. But that was it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, and I think it's good for us to actually see this as well, and people don't have to give a reason to it. It's like I'm glad that more people are telling us why. It's interesting for me the people that are abandoning their unit, and again, that's we wouldn't know why, but. Thanks for putting that together, and let's look at it over time. And you know, maybe when we have some strategic sessions, we could actually have a little bit of an understanding of some of the profiles of people that live in our building, and so that the board can have a better understanding of the types of issues, with obviously in a confidential manner, that actually that impact. It would be interesting too that I don't know if you know this offhand, Brad, and I'm sorry to put it on you, what the average length of time that people live in the seniors buildings.
I would have to get back to the board of the committee with regards to that, Linda.
Okay, that just might be interesting for us to actually see that, because we often focus on the, you know, the small percentage that aren't doing, and I was heartened by seeing this, that the number of people that are dying in place, and that, you know, that actually is actually a success story, that if people actually are supported in our buildings, and a lot of us actually have that wish that we actually live and die at home, and this is people's home. So thank you very much, Brad, for all of that. Any other questions, comments on that?
Their hand raised.
Oh,
Brenda.
go ahead, Brenda. Sorry. Go ahead, Brenda.
Hi. Yeah, I was follow up from your point, Linda. I was thinking the same thing that people are aging in place, you know, and I think that also means we need to be cognizant of that people are not necessarily moving out, right? So they are aging in place. It just speaks to the importance of what we're doing to provide services and supports, you know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brenda. And it's a perfect segue to our next item around engagement, partnerships, and communications update. Because I think that a lot of our engagement is not for the sake of engagement; it's actually to support people in their homes. So if there aren't any other questions, I will leave that. And I think we have a deputation from Bill Lohman on the next item, engagement, partnerships, and communications. And I think we're going to let him do the deputation first, I believe. Is that right, Karen? Oh, great.
Yes.
And do we have Bill?
I'm here. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Bill. Now we can see you. Yes, yes. And the clock is ready and we're ready for you. So go for it.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, and good afternoon, members of the Quality Tenant Engagement Committee. My name is Bill Lohman, and I'm hearing what was going on, and I have to comment on that in that it is true, and it's a reality that we are facing more and more. You know, having our neighbors disappear. As well as, you know, in some of our communities, being involved in helping to support these individuals and being part of the team, as it were, you know, to provide that support and care, whether it be through information or whether it be through assisting people with their language skills or you know, going to the store to get things for folks. These are things that, you know, many tenants do for their neighbors. And I think that it's, you know, when it comes to the community, you know, the engagement and the process of trying to build community and the idea of the community action funds is a real, it's showing to be a real boost in trying to get tenants to be more engaged and more involved in the activities in their buildings. And it's new, you know. I mean, this is now the second year that we've been doing this, and of course, with everything, there are bugs and little things that need to get worked out. One that I think is very important is, you know, when we talk about trust and building relationships, tenants get anxious when the things that they have been promised don't appear when they're supposed to. And I think that right now that's one of the things that we're trying to transition and work through, you know, with the, you know, community action funds and the gardening funds. You know, this is a new policy that we're trying to kind of juggle and fit in. And so they're kind of getting mixed around and, you know, and it can be unsettling for tenants. Things like with the gardening funds, you know, Super asked me today, when are the flowers getting here? You know, it's June. So, you know, so I mean, it's little things like that. I mean, I understand and I'm aware, you know, that the effort that's, you know, that's going in to try to make these things happen for so many people. It kind of comes down to, you know, tenants needing to be more involved and needing to be have a bigger part and bigger voice in the process, so that it actually becomes theirs. And I think I heard, you know, Councillor Crisani earlier speaking about team effort. And I think that really applies here. Right now, we've had a couple of years of putting things together, and right now we have, a new team, a bright, energetic Deanna and Daryl, who are, both stepping up and, grabbing a hold of what's been here already and moving it forward. So I think, I just hope that as we go forward and we build on this and try to understand better what's working and what's not, and making sure that tenants have the voice in their communities to empower them as, to take that on themselves and grow from that as partners with the others who are providing services and supports in the community. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Right to the timer. I'm going to let Deanna do the presentation because I think that she can probably best answer some of the points that you so capably raised. And once again, thank you, Bill, for being here and representing that really critical tenant perspective. Deanna, I'm going to pass it over to you to do the engagement, partnership, and communications update.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you as well to Bill for his deputation. Very helpful. Good reminders always for Bill on the things that matter. So I'll take us through this presentation as I think it speaks to some of that work we're doing to continue that momentum and grow and really grab hold, if I use Bill's terminology, of the work that we're doing. So if we could pull up the presentation, that would be fantastic. And I will take us through. Seeing it, should I be sharing my screen? I can do that. Karen, guide me here if I should be sharing my screen.
Sorry, no,
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
I'll
Just
have it
checking.
up in a minute.
No problem, no problem. So you'll see that we have, I'm drawing on some of the information that's been provided by Tom in his opening remarks, giving a bit of an update on some of the really great milestones, I would say in Q1. It's been a very busy 3 months for the engagement, partnerships, and communications team. And to be fair, all of the tenant volunteers we work with our staff to execute on many of these pieces. So the perfect timing. And we can jump straight to slide 3, Karen, and I can cut straight to some of these really exciting updates. Okay, so our planning meetings, those took place between January and March, just to give you a sense of what happened at the beginning of this year. There were 72 meetings held in that 3-month period. I'm sure you've heard about the annual planning meetings before. Those were really focused on confirming not only the priorities for each building in terms of programming and partnerships that they hope to see evolved in their community, but also a bit of education. We gave detailed information about the Community Connect Plus program, the CAF application process, did a bit of a walkthrough of what filling out those applications looks like. And that was that next step that came out of those 72 planning meetings. Our community service coordinators, our wonderful team, worked with tenant circles and tenant volunteers in the community to turn those priorities that were confirmed and solidified in those meetings into CAF applications, community action funding applications that were distributed. I'll talk a little bit more about those applications in a little bit. There's been some exciting progress. In terms of planning meetings for the 2026 year, I would call it, as you can see, we planned for 2025 in year, the same year in which we wanted to execute many of those priorities. A change that we've evolved now is we are going to do this planning exercise in the fall of this year. So we're planning the year prior for the year following. Many reasons for that, one being, and the most important being, it allows us to get those CAF applications for the following year in the system, running through our approval processes and delivery processes and procurement processes, so we can provide those events and those equipment purchases to tenants without any delay. So that lets us hit the ground running in 2026 to deliver. So we just go to the next page. So sorry about that. I jumped you too fast. Slide 4, please. So those were our annual planning meetings focused on priorities. Those took place January to March. From April to May, we facilitated our regional meetings, our regional tenant volunteer meetings. As a reminder, those are planned 3 times a year. And this was our spring session. Our next are coming in July, so coming up very soon. And we held 1 in each region in the afternoons of Thursdays and Fridays. As you can see, the dates are listed there. We had over 100 tenants participate, 107 tenant volunteers in attendance. Those rooms felt very full. Based on the data I have from last year, that's about double if we speak generally in terms of participation, which was very exciting for us. And we used that time for a little bit of consultation and presentation work. So we actually had the City of Toronto attend, do a consultation with participants about Senior Strategy 3.0. And Toronto Paramedic Services came in and did what I thought was a really informative presentation on beating the heat and how to stay safe as summer is upon us, and gave some really great materials and strategy to do that. And then a bunch of our time was also spent hearing from volunteers directly, hearing from our community service coordinator staff, but also volunteers themselves who offered to tell stories of some of the exciting events and initiatives they have running in their community as a way to share ideas and think about ways to continue to collaborate and support their communities in terms of their priorities. So the regional meetings were well attended. We heard in the room some really great feedback from folks on the sessions that we were able to bring in guests for, as well as the opportunity to share those insights with each other. And as I said, we're planning for our next round in July. Again, working with potential partners to facilitate some of those, some portion of those sessions. And again, get back in the room with our tenant volunteers. It's a really great opportunity to give them information that they can take back to their communities and really just connect with each other and share what we're learning as we all work together to implement Community Connect Plus. So that's the regional meetings. Next page. A bit of an overview on the stack recruitment, another really exciting output, I would say, of the beginning of this year. So, and another thank you to Bill, who was a huge contributor to executing this recruitment process in terms of sitting on interviews and being part of that process along with Alan. So thank you both. We had over 40 applicants. We had a really rich outreach process to make sure we hit as many channels as possible to get folks to apply if they were interested in being part of STACK. We ended up with 16 new members and 8 continuing alumni members. So that's 24 wonderful people who are now part of our team. We developed also a reserve list to fill any vacancies that come up in between. So we have a few other really engaged and amazing applicants that we have available if any attrition, I guess I would say, happens, and change in vacancies. We've got equal representation amongst the regions. So there are an equal number of members from each of the 4. The STACK members speak a total of over 10 different languages. It might be 11 based on the data that I got today. So a real diversity of perspective. And we also learned in our meeting in May about a real diversity of experience with TSHC. Some people have lived in their building for a long time, many years, some for a shorter period of time, like months or a few years. So it was really nice for me to see at least a real diversity of experience at the table, contributing to give us some ideas. Our first meeting with this group of 24 happened on May 13th, so just a couple weeks ago, in person at the City of Toronto. It was, I'm biased, I guess, but it was a wonderful meeting. We really focused that time on getting to know each other, hearing about where everyone's coming from in the room, give everyone a bit of an onboarding to what STACK is, some of its accomplishments of the past, what its mandate is, and how we plan to work together over the course of the year. And our next meeting is coming up quickly 1 month today, June 26th. We will be gathering STACK again to continue moving forward on the 2025 work plan that we set forward with our alumni members. So a quick thank you to everyone who's been part of that process, staff, tenants. As I mentioned, it was really wonderful to see and benefit from, for me as a new person, to see that wonderful process. Senior Speak has also just been released. It's hot off the presses. It's actually our 11th issue. Ignore 8th, it should say 11th. It's our 11th issue of the newsletter. It's available online and is being distributed in the community. We have some really, really nice tenant stories in there, as I know we always do, and some really useful information, again, for tenants on Community Connect Plus, safety and security, and fraud prevention. So this is a real team effort to pull together these products, and the team includes tenants as well who agree to tell their wonderful stories in our Senior Speak newsletter. It's pre-translated into 6 languages, but can be further translated upon request. So if anyone needs that, that's available to request. Next page. CAF application progress, and I'm excited because I know Grant did a wonderful job presenting our Q1 2025 data because of the wonderful work of the engagement and partnerships team to automate how we gather and manage our CAF application data. I can give an even more current update. So as of today, this number even that you see in the materials is a little bit outdated. There are actually 286 applications for CAF funding that have been submitted so far this year, keeping in mind there were 180 in all of last year. So those annual planning meetings really paid off and led to a large number of applications. To date, I know as of Q1, which was the end of March, we had about 43 approved. As of today, May 26th, I just got the data. We have 257 of the 286 applications approved. So, you know, the first 3 months of the year, because we were doing those annual planning meetings, more of our time in those first 3 months were inputting and submitting those CAF applications and developing them with the tenant circle. So the approvals were lagging a bit behind, if you will, if you were to look at Q1 data. But as you can see, the process is moving along swimmingly. So 257 of the 286, and that represents about $226,000 in funding. So now the work begins and continues to order various pieces of equipment, execute on events that we supported the tenant circles and volunteers to plan. And Bill, your deputation reminded me a big part of the work our team is doing is how we communicate progress on things like the ordering, like delivering upon the CAF applications that were made. A lot of work goes into them, and we know that we can work with our team to continue to provide updates on progress because we do have some timelines, you know, for us to approve them, to get materials ordered and to execute. So very exciting to see some wonderful progress in community action funds. Next slide. So now a bit of an update on partnerships. So in Q1, we implemented, while there was reporting in the past directly from partners on their programming, their outputs and their outcomes achieved for tenants, Q1 really saw us implement an enhanced approach. Again, that means a little bit more automation or a little bit more digitization of that process, if you will. So that means we can gather quantitative data like numbers and details about attendance and number of programs, but are also able to gather some of that qualitative information you see there. So impact stories, allowing our partners to tell us a little bit about what their programming has done in the community and hear from them on some of the feedback they received from tenants. So just to highlight here about some of those impact stories, and this partnership reporting cycle that happens quarterly really empowers us with the ability to dive deep into how our partnerships are going and how our events are taking place in the community, and also able to quantify for folks of the board and others about actual outputs achieved through these partnerships. So a nice evolution. The final update I will provide here is, as the board is aware, we've been in the process of solidifying and finalizing partnership agreements with our known partners. Happy to say we are over 92% in terms of signature. We're down to the last 2 or 3 or maybe 4 that we're waiting for signature on, and most of that is just final reviews by respective legal or otherwise teams, and those are up for signature. So a huge piece of progress as well to solidify those relationships with partners and be able to maintain a structured relationship in that way. So big progress there. Next page. So just a lens on, now that I gave you a bit of an overview of where we've been over the last number of months, some of the upcoming activities on our radar in terms of the team and for your awareness. So launch of the tenant welcome guide that will be going out in June. So right upon us, translated into 13 languages, a really great partnership with the operations and Brad's team. Finalization and approval of the translation and interpretation policy, which will come to this committee and the board as per process. So that will take place. Continued process enhancements to support CAF and the use of space application activities. So just shouting out that the team, as you see with the data you saw today, is doing a bunch of work to standardize our processes, automate what we can, and simplify things so we can turn around approvals around use of space and activity funds as quickly as possible. We'll also to continue to support the IDEA strategy. There's a ton of great work happening there as part of the implementation. So we're continued to be involved there from a communications perspective. And Tom, you highlighted it, Linda, you highlighted it. June is a very busy month in terms of important moments in Ontario, in the world. So, we're working on Ontario Seniors Month, National Indigenous History Month and Indigenous Peoples Day, Filipino Heritage Month, Pride, as Tom mentioned, and the 3-year anniversary of TSHC, all very exciting milestones we will be celebrating in June. Unless there are any questions, that's the materials. Yep, there we go.
Go ahead, Brenda. I was thinking about Brenda, who advocated fiercely for a simplified process for CAF, and I just wanted to say, way to go, Brenda. You held our feet to the fire on that. Deanna might not know that, but go ahead.
The devil is always in the details, isn't it? And keep it simple. Thanks. Just a couple quick things. The 72 meetings that you had, where are we? What staff that? Which people? Your
Primarily members of my team, Brenda. So the community services coordinators facilitated those. We definitely received some support from operations at the building level in terms of the space and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's quite an achievement there. And the STAC, the new members on STAC, is there a training or volunteer training package? Have we developed that yet? Because we have been talking about that.
Great question, Brenda, through you, the chair. So they have been onboarded to the STAC committee. We did that in the first meeting. We actually dedicated 2/3 of the agenda to that. So there was a bit of an onboarding there. In terms of a package, the short answer is not yet through the chair, but we are working on that onboarding package. I was just in a meeting earlier today about it. So it's at the top of our priority list as well, Brenda, to complete. But there's nothing for the STAC members beyond the information we provided them in the preparation for the first meeting.
Okay, I've asked for this for quite some time because my experience has been, we often invite consultation, community members, but if you don't equip them with the skills to participate and to lead, then it becomes a fruitless consultation process.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And we don't want that. On the partnership reporting, how frequently do they report? Is it an annual report that they do for you? Is it
So through you, Mr. Chair, we gather this report every quarter.
And does that get reported to us, the numbers, or what will happen with the report?
So that is a new set of reporting that we've implemented.
Yeah.
So I would assume, I take Grant or Tom your steer on how we figure that out in terms of governance, but we do get that data once a quarter now, where we can provide more insight.
Well, it might be useful to at some other point discuss that or have some sort of report so we get a sense of that. And related to that is on the partnership agreements. I assume this is new step in a sense, a new language. Are we asking different things in this sponsorship agreement compared to previous iterations of it? Is there some sort of accountability feature built in, or because part of the difficulty in the past has been the lack of accountability and feedback, and if we had problems with them, we didn't really meaningfully have a way to communicate or put some metal to the pedal to make sure that the changes occurred. So what is the piece in the partnership agreement that speaks to accountability and reporting and reciprocity of outcomes, particularly outcomes, right? Can you speak to that?
Tom, your hand's up if you want to go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
through the chair to Brenda, because I've been really kind of familiar with this one right from the beginning. And so, yeah, to your point,
Yes.
Brenda, so what is new? Like it is new in these agreements, the actual like the request for the data, for the information, for the monitoring. So that
Okay.
has previously not been happening. In fact, all of the agreements were out of date, right? So
Right.
we now have that in the agreement, and and we can respond to that, right? To get and then we will decide on how and when to report to a committee and board. Thanks.
Okay. Because the follow-up point here is the feedback loop. If there is a problem or concern, or tenants have expressed either wanting something different or more, what have you, how does that get fed into some sort of system? Either fed into our staff, and do the staff feed that into the partners, et cetera, et cetera? Have we figured that piece out, or have we addressed it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a great question. So there's two pieces to that. There is the ongoing, as we learn things about a particular partner, formally, informally, whatever that may look like. We have ongoing open relationships and communications with those partners, Brenda. So typically that starts at the community level and will involve Daryl, the manager on the team, or myself as required and necessary to maintain the partnership. And then, of course, through the agreements, there is a formal expiry date of those agreements. They're typically annual. So that's another sort of formal opportunity that if there's anything we need to discuss that we weren't able to in the duration of the partnership, we do have that opportunity when we renew the contracts. Tom, not sure if you have anything to add. Like you said, you've been steeped in this from the get-go. Okay.
Okay. So just to reiterate this whole issue of not only accountability, but also feedback from Loop. And that was kind of missing in the past. So, and doesn't necessarily mean a negative communication, but even improve or want additional or, services, etc. So we could just be sensitive to that, because I don't think it's quite yet sufficient, but we're working our way through this, but I'd like to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the process of paperwork and data gathering, that the issue of improvement and accountability are the key points here, and transparency, as well.
Thanks, Brenda.
That's it.
Terrific. Really good questions and good presentation. I just have one quick question for the stack. Do we still have city support? Is it supported by a city member? Because they were very involved previously, right?
Tom, go ahead, but I'm nodding. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, through the chair to the committee. So yeah, the city they do support the process. However, it is really led right by the team at Toronto Seniors Housing Hub, but we do have the city still present. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. It's a terrific. Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, we have a few presentations, so we might have to be a little bit quick with our time, because I think you have two more items: the city report, which is timely, and the service model, and then the NORC report. So I'm going to pass it over to Deanna. We may have to go a little bit faster to also leave time for the safety unit report.
We'll do. No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. So I will begin the presentation.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Do we defer the questions then? I mean, I think.
No, I'm so sorry. I missed you. Go ahead. If you have a question, please feel free. It's important.
You know what? I'll pass. I mean, let's go on. I mean, in the interest of time, I can come back if we have some time at the end.
Okay, because I don't mind. We can take it. You're important. Feel free to ask the question.
No, a couple of things I want.
I just missed you.
Couple of things I want to follow up on. One is I think and I've got a series of questions, but I'll focus on the priority ones. I mean, I think it would also be helpful in the presentations if we understand what some of the challenges are with tenant engagement and with the partnership. I mean, I love all these numbers, and I think these numbers look great, but I think it would also be nice for us to understand what are some of the tasks that we are trying to grapple with. And this, particularly, I'm worried about sort of the getting an engagement from a cross-section of the demographic, the ethnic, social, economic cohort. So we're actually have a true representation, or are we seeing a quote unquote a repeat of, and I know that Deanna, you addressed this, saying that we've had a number of new applicants for the STAC program, but I think it'd be helpful for us to better understand some of the metrics kind of behind the scene. And the second one, which I'll end with, is I mean, I think it'd be helpful to understand the nature of the 286 applications, because that's an awful lot of applications. And, you know, are we sort of spreading ourselves too thinly, or does this make sense based on locally driven initiatives? I'm not against that. I'm just trying to understand the efficacy of that process and ensuring that we're optimizing the spend.
Those were really worthwhile questions. And Deanne, I don't know if you want to comment, but that, you know, it's probably a good thing in general. I think for the board, you know, this team is doing such a great job and we do actually hear really good metrics, but it would be helpful to know where's the struggle, like what is the struggle? And even to Bill's point that, you know, are we actually with all of this work able to actually meet people's expectations? So Deanna, do you want to comment?
No, I think I agree through you, the chair. I completely agree. Happy to provide that reporting and give that insight and get your support as we navigate those challenges to keep meeting the bar. The bar has been set very high for this type of
Yeah,
work.
that's great. And I think just the message is that it's okay for the board to also hear, and you know, for those who are listening in, that you know where our struggle is. And to Brenda's point, often we you know we've done really well in putting something together initially, and then we have so much going on that we haven't you know kind of kept track of it. So it was worth waiting for your questions, for you. Thank you, and good points. So if I haven't missed any other hands, I think we will move on then to the city follow-up on the service model report, which was also requested by this committee. So over to you too again, Deanna.
Thank you. Thank you. So through you, the chair, this is and I will be as brief as possible and open the floor for any questions. So this is a bit of a report back on, as we all know, I think on April 8th, which time flies, there was a report to the ECDC committee, the Economic Development and Social Community Services Committee. I'm mixing up my acronyms here. Close.
Economic and Community Development Committee, ECDC.
That's it. Economic and Community Development. I'm so used to the acronym, but Linda, good reminder not to just use those. So we had that item go to that committee on April 8th. You know, I will keep it brief in terms of the background. I'm sure you are all aware we provided some support to SSLTC, or Senior Services in Long-Term Care at the city, to produce this item. It was submitted to the committee and was adopted by the committee as is. So shortly following that meeting, and shortly after myself joining the team, that was one of my first meetings, sitting down with the SSLTC City Division folks, myself and members of my team, to wrap our heads around all the wonderful commitments that came out of this motion to the committee. So if you recall, the report included a number of very tangible next steps in which TSHC and city divisions will work together to implement priority programs in a number of communities across our entire portfolio. That includes Parks and Recreation, Toronto Police Services, paramedics, Toronto Fire Services, the Association of Community Centers. So we're really cutting across the entire city to implement those priority programs we helped identify in our previous exercises with tenants to engage on that item. So what's happened since April 8th? So again, one of the first meetings I attended joining the organization was with SSLTC to create a sort of plan of action. So how do we begin to work with each division that was part of this work and has made a commitment in this report to implement these in the community? So we've had a number of kickoff style meetings. They're short and sweet and very focused on answering some really key questions. What is the appropriate timing of these events given our commitments in the report, and in consideration of work going on in city divisions already? This is the busy season for many other city divisions. So working together to time these events, schedule the space, and confirm the logistics. And that includes everything from site tours with some divisions because they need to figure out what a fitness class would look like. Some involve site tours to check out our facilities for kitchens or for presentations around healthy eating. So that is actively happening as we speak. And we remain on track to implement those programs in alignment with the timelines in the city report. And then at a community level, as those are getting planned and executed, we are following our typical sort of engagement best practices, again, to give access to the space, promote, notify tenants. We're offering that sort of expertise and support to the city division so they get maximum turnout for these various events. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer more specific questions. The work is really underway to implement against this report.
Great. And yeah, I know, does anybody have any questions? Because I think the report was provided, and it does seem like we're developing some nice partnership with the city as well, and aligned with the seniors. I don't know if Andrea or if anybody else wants to make any comments.
Brenda.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brenda. I was flipping pages. I can only get 6 people on my screen, so I'm trying to flip. Brenda, you're muted.
Sorry, just a quick question on the recreation and wellness programs. They're targeting 3 buildings for Parks and Recreation to develop fitness programs, etc. Is there any possibility of possibly finding ways to get people to the community centers? So whether it's Wheel-Trans or buses. I only say this because I know a number of them have very active seniors programs, and I know for myself, my local one, there's a very cheap rate to join the exercise and gym program, which is $150 a year, which is phenomenal for seniors. And it's a full range of stuff. So instead of necessarily replicating all of that with equipment in our buildings, can there be something considered about engaging people more in the existing programs in the community? So it's a two-way thing. Not only do they bring supports and services to our buildings, but is there ways that we can encourage our community tenants to engage in community resources and facilities? Just throwing that out as a suggestion.
Yeah, Deanna, I did notice that in the report that was part of the mandate, wasn't it? But go ahead, Deanna.
Through you, the chair. Yes, that is part of our exact mandate, Brenda. There are both specific divisions that we are working with to do that outreach, with the Association of Community Centers. For example, we are helping them do some outreach about what's in the community, and that's kind of become built into our conversations with every other agency that we're meeting, or division, I should say, that we are working with to implement. We're raising that at every meeting, and we're agreeing at that potential. Again, Tom, I don't know if you have any context there. Andrea, I see your hand, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, because it's a two-way thing. We do want supports in our buildings, but it's also engaging people in the general community where the multiplicity of offerings are out there, and often for cheap or free.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll just quickly say we don't want to duplicate a service that tenants have very easy access to that's right next door. Just recalling that we do have 83 building profiles, which do highlight what is in the vicinity. And so our senior services coordinator, for example, have that information to share with tenants. But we do want to work with those divisions to be more robust, right, in terms of letting our tenants know and them helping us let our tenants know about what's available. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because often providing a program on site. I know when I was working in the field, I did work with off-site programs. Parks and Rec gave me the money and staff to do stuff off-site. And that's how we developed our youth program. So it can be done. I know whether they do it now, I don't know, but it can be done to have that notion of off-site programming. But also,
it sounds like it's a big part of this initiative. I know, Andrea, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
I really just wanted to reiterate that one of the kind of hallmark pieces of the integrated service model is that the city kind of wrap its services around the senior tenants who live in Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation buildings. And, we're here in a kind of oversight capacity. So if you're not feeling at that level of support from city divisions, then you must tell me so that we can actually fix it, because that is the point, right? That has always been the point. And, I have a long history in this space. I've been working on it for many, many years. Bill and I have been working on this for a long time. And, from the very idea of having a separate corporation through the development of the integrated service model and the evaluation of the integrated service model and so on and so forth. So really now it is about how we at the city can support always we're always continuously improving and trying to continuously improve. So just to say, please flag for me if you're not feeling the love from the city, then we want to hear about that. That's it.
Thanks, and we will have Deanna will be monitoring this, and you know, and I think
Right.
it was a good report, and it's great that we're not an island, right?
No.
And I think that whole spirit of actually people accessing resources in their community is really important. Fareed or anyone else, any comments or questions? All right, this actually flows very nicely to our next item, and I believe Bill, who's still on the line, is going to depute. And the NORC report is a naturally occurring retirement community, which is an interesting concept. And I think Bill will give you your 5 minutes, and then we'll have Deanna give us a little bit. This came up as actually a request from this committee in terms of understanding this concept and where it fits with our organization. So over to you, Bill.
Thank you,
I
Madam
know
Chair.
up to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I mean, it is a very interesting process about connecting the community. I'm sure when you looked at the report about where the NORC idea and the NORC Innovation Center connected with housing, I am the NORC ambassador from that 2020 program, and so I've been involved off and on since then. And you know, I think in a way, the learnings that came from that experience are evidenced by the effort of volunteers and the work that we've been able to do here. It's in my building, and that goes along with this NORC idea of the in the aging in community idea, which essentially is the integrated service model, and how it connects. So this is showing something of a roadmap about how these different hospitals, the nurses, the social workers, the provincial care coordinator, how all of these things can, these different entities can come together to provide the supports that that a community needs. And I think, like everything, just I don't know, my screen just went online. Well,
Thanks, Bill. We lost you for a minute, but I think you're back.
oh, thank you. So reading in the articles, one of the respondents spoke about how knowledge makes access easier. And I think in a way that's what we are experiencing, or trying to understand in our community. 600 folks have either passed away or nursing homes, and so this is a reality that we're living with and becoming more aware of, and so it's a real question about how do we connect all of these things, to bring those supports. And I think the Innovation Center's bringing the Aging in Community Training Program sounds like a very good start. Looking at that, I'm going, well, community building, engagement, grief and bereavement, system navigation. I mean, these are the things that we deal with, and are trying to put into place right now. And so, I think the model gives something of a framework on how to proceed. But what it also shows is, that there's a real connection between this NORC model and the wider engagement aspect of the community connect, model coming together. And And reading through this, all of these things, it's about tenants. And there's not a whole lot of with tenants in here. The programs are good. The effort is amazing. And I've seen a lot of change take place. But there's at the community level, I think this is where this is where the understanding needs to be, to see what's happening and what's working, why, or maybe why not. Of course, each community is different, but the truth is that what you learn in one place gives you a leg up on the next 2 or 3 that you're doing. And that's actually what's taking place right now with, how things are being built into the communities. And I just want to go back quickly to, make the point that from the city, our piano got tuned. It's still terrible, but it's in that process of the city's program. And we have a gentleman who is now coming around the building and starting to do the wiring for our Wi-Fi that should be done by the end of July, giving us, a real open inspiration for the fall about the things that can be possible. So I just want to finish with the importance of the feedback loop and about the need for tenants to be involved in this process. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And isn't it wonderful that you're an ambassador for the NORCs? So we have, this is an introduction to this concept, and I think we will be presenting more about this. But maybe you can provide the highlights, Deanna, in terms of our involvement. And your report was very helpful. Over to you.
Yes, through the chair. I wonder if there are any questions as well. I know we put the report forward. I'm cognizant of time, and I know we have a few other things on the agenda. But in terms of the highlights, the things I would say are similar, building off of Bill's deputation. We have been able to learn, not only implement directly with NORC. So you saw the statistics in there and the number of communities that we're in, the level of expansion that we are planning for. I even have some statistics on uptake in terms of participation. It's in the hundreds of tenants when it comes to all the events they're holding just in the buildings that they're in. And I think the other piece that I wanted to highlight that you don't see in those numbers in that detail is what we're learning from working with the NORC Innovation Center, what we're learning about engagement, how to work with tenants. I'm hearing and seeing those lessons being shared across my entire team. And even if, a program with the NIC isn't in a particular community today, there are certainly lessons being shared on how they engage, how they support building up their ambassadors and the like through that work. So we're learning directly through training, but we're also learning indirectly through having them in the community doing that work. So maybe I'll stop there unless there are questions through you, the chair. If there are any, I'm happy to answer them or have that at a different meeting, whatever you prefer.
Yeah. Any comments, questions? I think while people are thinking, I think what made me happy about seeing this report was that we've often said, let's not go it alone. Part of having an integrated service plan in our buildings is actually partnering with others that are leading the way in innovations, and also not underestimating that our population is actually a great population for people to have access to innovate and to provide support. So it goes both ways. So that's kind of what my reflection was. But any other comments? All right. So keep us informed. I think the more that we see people getting involved with this and kind of highlighting some of the buildings where this is working and how we can see the spread will be really helpful for the future. You've been busy, Deanna. Deanna's only been with us for a couple of months, and the fact that she's provided these in-depth reports speaks to the caliber of our senior team. So thank you, and thank you, Andrea, for your comments too, because I think it's really important that we're again not doing this alone. Super. So and thank you, Bill, for your deputations, like usual, right on spot and helping us to keep our focus where we should. Our last item is an important item as well, and Grant is going to lead this one. And this is we did actually have a very brief presentation from the community safety unit, and now we're going to actually have regular quarterly reporting. And I believe that this is the first. And I'm going to pass it over to Grant and Alan to take it from there.
Thank you, Linda. So the report today is the Q1 update from the Community Safety Unit. We have Al Britton, the Acting Senior Director from the Community Safety Unit here, and also joining Al is Mona Batoni, who's the Senior Operations Manager at the CSU. Welcome, Al. In a second, I'll turn it over to Al to walk through the report. There was a discussion at the last QTE, as you noted, Linda, with this item, where there was some content prepared and presented by the CSU. The report that's before the committee today has built upon that report that was delivered back in March, where there's additional content, for example, around some of the proactive activities, things like resource allocation, and other aspects of some of the questions and areas that were brought up in the last meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Al and to walk through the material.
Well, thanks very much, Grant, and good afternoon to everyone. And I first like to start off by apologize for not being able to make the last meeting. Unfortunately, something came up I was not able to, and I thank Mona for filling in. I have reviewed the video from the meeting. We've worked very closely with Tom, Grant, and Brad to try and come up with a more holistic report, and I hopefully will be able to answer any questions that you have. But I was hoping I could just do a very short overview on what the report has, and then we'll certainly be open to any questions that you may have. I would like to start off by saying this report is being tailored to what yourself and the board overall would like to see. So we do see this as a work in progress. We've kind of tailored ours for the TSHC board, and we certainly will do the same here, and I hope this is more on point. The first thing I just wanted to touch on was the calls for service. In Q1 of 2025, we saw an increase of about 11% calls. Mostly we're noticing that's from neighbor disputes and parking complaints. So I'm very happy it's not serious crime, but it is still a number that's increasing that we want to address and want to reduce. The second was proactive engagement. CSU conducted 254 patrols in Q1 of 2025 and attended 18 events. We also visited that tenant visits increased significantly to 45, and that's where tenants have concerns where they want to see our staff to either discuss safety issues or issues of concern within the building that sometimes aren't related to safety, but sometimes they feel comfortable talking to our CSAs. And those are our community safety advisors who conduct our SEPTED audits. The next is the criminal activity trends, and this is one that I'm happy to say we're seeing a significant decrease. In Q1 of 2025 compared to Q4 of 2024, we've seen a decrease of 45%. And I think that's important to note that, again, our numbers are not significantly large overall, but any one serious incident of violence is one too many. So we certainly take that everyone seriously, but it is nice to see a decrease. Crimes against property, which unfortunately are significantly up in the city and up in our many portfolios, we've luckily seen a decrease of 13%, and that's through, I think, a lot of the work at the sites by site staff and by Tom and his team, and I do think the CSU is playing a role in that as well. But we did go down 13% in that quarter. The next was the violence reduction program. I just wanted to give a little bit of history because I know this committee and the TSHC board was not formed when the violence reduction started, but in 2019, the city saw a significant increase in gun violence, and the TSHC portfolio overall saw a very significant increase. So the violence reduction program was started predominantly with boots on the ground, and that was special constables dedicated to buildings that were in need of extra security measures. The efforts of our CSU, Toronto Police, our site staff and partners have significantly decreased the gun violence on all of our properties throughout the portfolio over this time period. And I'm very happy to say that we've seen great reductions that we now have to reassess. And we have to reassess what the new model of VRP will look like. And that's something we're going to be doing through a deployment committee in the future. And we have invited TSHC staff to participate in that deployment committee. We also want to look at a data-driven model where we can dedicate our resources at sites that need it required, not only through the data, but through the verification process with site staff. Because sometimes we found data doesn't tell the whole story. There's some instances where data says there's a significant problem, and then there's others that says there is no problem, but then we talk to site staff, and that's not necessarily the case. So due to underreporting, sometimes we need to change that through the verification process. Security measures is another section in the report, and that covers basically our third-party security deployment. I just kind of like to say it like this when I talk about our security contract, is Toronto Police are the law enforcement entity of record for all properties, TSHC and TCHC. CSU is the security provider, and third-party security is a contracted strategy used by the CSU and by TCHC and TSHC. So we deploy our third-party security predominantly on the model that I mentioned before, that's data-driven, with some site verification through Brad and his team, or through discussions with Grant. And we will try to find certain buildings. Recently, we had one area that we had security deployed. We found that the security had made a significant decrease or contributed towards a significant decrease in incidents there. So we redeployed them to another building where unit takeovers were an issue, and we've seen some good results there. And the last thing I just want to talk about, training and collaboration. CSU have taken the feedback from Grant and from Brad and Tom, and we've provided extra training to our frontline staff that was provided through the recommendations of seniors. We've provided that to our frontline staff, and we certainly hope that will contribute to a better working partnership and a better customer service response when our members attend calls for service or conduct directed patrols, which we like to do when resources are available. The last thing I just wanted to touch on, if you don't mind, before we kind of get into questions, was just in 2019, the Ontario government brought into law the Community Safety Policing Act. And that act took 5 years for all the regulations to be written, and it fully came into force on April 1st of 2024. And when it came into force, one of the things that caused some issues for the Community Safety Unit was we had to be designated under that act as a special constable employer. And in doing so, we had to make a submission to the Solicitor General's office. And when we did so, our application was rejected at the time because our memorandum of understanding with the Toronto Police Service was 25 years old at that point. So what occurred was the rewriting of that memorandum of understanding, the necessary changes, approvals, and it was finally signed and approved early this year. We then resubmitted to the ministry, and we have finally received our sign off. The problem that caused was we had a full class of special constables that were fully trained and not able to be sworn in until we had that designation. Plus, our special constables are required every 5 years to renew their status. So they go through a full background check every 5 years with Toronto Police. And then if they're approved, it goes to their board. We receive our verification to swear those people back in, and they remain special constables. Unfortunately, without this letter or this designation, we had 35 special constables lose their status short term. We've been using them for other administrative duties, for some call response for low-rank calls via the telephone, but they are not able to go out in the field as special constables with peace officer authorities. We've rectified that in part, that in June, some of our members are going to be brought, 28 members are going to be presented to the Police Service Board. We're trying, obviously, to push for the rest as soon as possible. That may be July or September, depending on the availability of the agenda for the board. But we are trying to get them back, and that's why we want to do the deployment now. It's a very good time with the CSU review kind of will be rolling out in the short term, as well as us getting more resources. Be a great time to reassess our deployment. So that's the part I wanted to cover at the beginning. I look forward to any questions.
Great, thanks, Alan, and welcome to the meeting. And I just want to thank you before I take the questions for the reporting and the context and being here. But I'm sure that there's questions. So Brenda, I think I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. If you could just clarify, repeat again this order. The special constables are ours, and then you said there was third party. These are people
Yes.
we contract with to do certain portions.
That's correct.
And what portions do the third party people do?
So third-party security are used in three different aspects. The first is the one that you see the most, and that would be our static third-party security at front doors of buildings that have been designated and require of a little bit more assistance for access control, for perhaps where we're seeing some congregation antisocial behavior in stairwells, et cetera. We use our third party for that. The second part, which you'll see less, would be fire watch, where perhaps an elevator's down or perhaps there's an issue with equipment in the building where we're mandated by law that we have to provide a guard for, and that's usually through fire code issues. Okay. And the third would be through our facilities management have key holder services, and that's when they're doing work in a unit where sometimes they're required to have security present for purposes of ensuring there's nothing stolen, that everything goes properly during the time of the repair in that unit.
Right. And is this historical? Like, why would we use third party instead of having it in-house? Is there rationale or explanation for that?
Yes, there's a long-standing history on it, and and what I mean by that is some definitely significantly predates myself, but the community safety unit was predominantly staffed by security guards back in the day. They were brought in-house in 2000 for a pilot project of special constable status was designated in 2002, I believe, and it was made full-time. And we did have an entry-level position called community patrol officer, and somewhere along the line predating me, that was removed and the third-party contract with security guards was brought in. Ultimately, third-party security are able to provide some safety and security aspects to a location. However, they do not have all the full authorities as a special constable. So they cannot arrest and detain and transport. So our special constables can do that. And then, of course, the police have the more appropriate authorities for law enforcement.
And the last question was related to our relationship with the police. You mentioned this memorandum of understanding. How much do we engage the police? Are we dealing most things in-house with ourselves and a third party, or what triggers the call to the police? Is it the criminality aspect? Is it the extreme nature of the incident? Like, where did the police get involved?
Yes, that's a very good question. And CSU do have policing authorities for purposes of the properties that are owned by TSHC, of course, including seniors' properties. So our people can make arrests under certain delegated authority from the police. So if we make an arrest, we have to immediately contact the officer in charge of the division that oversees that area. That officer in charge will give us instructions as to what our people do. They transport the person. If Toronto Police are going to send somebody to do transport, that's the most obvious front end contact you'll see with the police. The second will be joint patrols, where the neighborhood community officers or area officers for Toronto Police and our staff will connect, and we'll do joint patrols in the buildings. And that's usually just to send the message of, obviously provide safety and security, but just to show that we're in this together. It's a partnership for safety and security in the buildings. On the back end, we have an investigative unit which works very closely with all of the different aspects of Toronto Police, and that would be their investigative units, their frontline staff, and they also attend the Toronto Police crime traffic crime traffic order management meetings, CTOMs, and our staff attend those meetings to share information at the law enforcement level that we're appropriately allowed to share under the MOU.
And the community mental health teams, do we call them in if there are situations where we need them? You know, the community health teams that are placed, well, I don't know the exact title for them because it changes depending on the municipality, but do we engage with them? Do we use their services and supports? Or is that more our staff, our community coordinator staff that calls it in, or do the security folks call it in?
So through the chair, I can just grab that one. That's the Toronto Community Crisis Team, right? For
thank you. That's
responses. And so that can be a referral from anyone or call from anyone.
Yes.
However, our staff are very aware of that service. Our complex tenancy team are made aware of that service, and it is being utilized.
Okay, so it's utilized at that end, not necessarily at the CSU end. All right. All right. Thank you.
If you don't mind, Chair, if I can just add on to that, just one aspect that I just wanted to touch on is the CSU special constables do have the authority to arrest and detain people under the Mental Health Act. There's 2 times that would happen: when the person's in crisis or a danger to someone else would be one criteria.
Right.
The second, where an order has been issued by a justice of the peace and our people are authority bound that they have to enforce that order and then immediately turn the person over to the hospital staff. So we do have that ability under the new act. For the first 6 months of that act, of the CSPA, the authority was removed from special constables. So we did not look into crisis teams as far as our people working beyond that. However, after that 6-month period, feedback was provided to the government and it's been reinstated. So our people do have that authority. So it is something we're going to work with Tom and his team and with the TSHC team to see how we do that moving forward. If we can expand, as you've noted, to make a program internally. But as of right now, it is our special constables, as Tom said, working in that capacity.
But thank you very much, because I know it's a balancing act when you involve the police. Sometimes it worsens the situation, sometimes it improves. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it sounds like there are some situations where definitely the police, like any other building, need to be involved. I'm thinking about even unit takeovers has always been something that's pretty tremendous in a seniors building. Any other comments or questions? This was very, very helpful, and I think this is a beginning of regular reporting. I appreciate the closer contact with your team, and I do appreciate your comment about senior specific training and even understanding some of the unique behavioral issues that you would encounter in a seniors building that are different than some of the other buildings, and the vulnerability of so many of our clients, our tenants. Any other questions? Jim, go ahead.
Is there more than one third-party security organization under contract, or is it one specific security agency that's under contract?
Yes, through the chair. Currently, for the static security that I mentioned, and for the Firewatch, there's one vendor, Star Security, and that security company was awarded the contract through a RFP process. There is a second security provider for our facilities management staff. We did at one point have a very large contract, but for processing issues and payment issues, the key holder services were separated to their facilities management, and they use Allied Universal for their contract.
Okay, thank you. Is G4 still used?
Indirectly, the answer would be yes, because G4 was bought out by, or Allied Universal bought out G4, and that is still the provider for the FM side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other comments, questions? Am I missing any hands?
Tom's hands up.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Legacy.
Okay, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I was going to ask Tom or Grant, anything that you want to add in terms of just actually, such an important area, and just anything that you want to bring to the board's attention. It sounds like we're going to have a closer relationship with Al and his team, but anything you want to add?
I will just take a moment. Yeah, so through the church, we did, Al just touched on this briefly, but we did have the chance to meet with Al and the Chief Operating Officer, Nadia, at Toronto Community Housing. And so we really just even honed in more as we move forward, how do we want to focus this? And so we're looking at like really identifying based on data, the priority buildings, what starting to classify, have our data similarly aligned with TSHC, how they categorize things. So then, the dispersion of resources, which is, kind of reflects the needs of our individual buildings and the security that's required. So I'm really confident that we're moving forward a more comprehensive approach around security, kind of based on data, based on information, and then the kind of the appropriate response to that in terms of working with Al and his team. So yeah, thanks.
Great. And Grant, last word to you. If there isn't any other, I'm not missing any other hands, I'm hoping. Okay. Grant, anything?
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you, Linda. So thank you to Al and Mona and the CSU team for making time. We'll continue to work with them on the future reporting to QTE as well. And we look forward to continued discussions here. So
yeah, and just to reiterate something that was said with the other presentation, please also feel free to bring to the board things that maybe we should be aware of that aren't working so well. Like this is such an important area. If you don't feel safe in your building, you're not going to go down to your party room, or you're not going to engage with other people, and it just can make such a difference. So we really appreciate all the efforts. Any other comments or questions? We're just going to go to the adjournment then. I want to thank Alan and Mona for joining us. And any other items that anyone needs to bring forward before we adjourn? Somehow or other we got to 5 o'clock, and thank you. I moved things along a little bit, so I'm sorry if I shortchanged any of the conversation, but I know that we can always bring it back. All right. And so before I ask for an adjournment, I just want to thank our staff for putting together such a good package. I found it actually really good to read, and felt well prepared for this meeting. It seemed like the right information. So thank you. And you're always adding things on to us. So at this point, I'm going to look for Jim and Fareed to give me the okay to adjourn. Fareed, seconded by Jim. All in favor? All right, now everybody needs to stand up. We've been sitting for 2 hours, and go outside for at least 15 minutes to get a little bit of vitamin D. So we'll call that an adjournment. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, Linda. Good job, Linda.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.